Hello and welcome to today's event, Shifting Left, How to Get More Out of Your IT Service Desk. This is Bill Rouse. I'm a senior fellow for the Center for Digital Government, as well as an IT and cybersecurity professor for Tulane University. Before that, I spent a long career in state and local government as an IT executive. And I'm excited to serve as moderator for today's event. And I just want to say thank you for joining us. I know we're in for an informative session over the next 60 minutes. Before we begin, a few brief housekeeping notes are available. A recording of this presentation will be emailed to all registrants within 48 hours. You can use the recording for your reference or feel free to pass along to your colleagues. This webcast is designed to be interactive, and you can participate in Q&A with us by asking questions at any time during the presentation. You should see a Q&A box at the bottom left of the presentation panel. Please send in your questions as they come up throughout our presentation. We will love to hear from you and address as many of these questions as we can during the Q&A portion near the close of the webinar today. Also, if you would like to download a PDF of the slides for this presentation, you can do so by clicking the Webinar Resources widget at the bottom of the console. Also, during today's webinar, you will be able to connect with your peers via LinkedIn, Twitter, and Facebook. Please use hashtag GovTechLive to connect with your peers across the government technology platform via Twitter. And at the close of the webinar, we encourage you to complete a brief survey about the presentation. We'd like to hear what you think. And if you're unable to stay with us for the entire webinar, but would like to complete the survey as much as you're able, please click the survey widget at the bottom of the screen to launch the survey. Otherwise, it will pop up once the webinar concludes. Finally, at this time, we recommend you disable your pop-up blockers. And if you're experiencing any media player issues or have other problems, please visit the webcast help guide by clicking on the help button at the bottom of the console. Joining me today to discuss this very timely topic is Andrew Graff and Abigail Ferguson. Andrew is the Chief Product Officer for Team Dynamics. Andrew focuses on helping customers optimize their IT teams with automation and collaboration tools. His innovative approach has been the driving force behind the vision to combine IT service management with project portfolio management for a unified view of resources and work. He has also brought to market an enterprise integration and automation platform that will help state and local government to better manage data and connect systems for improved workflow and automation. Abigail is the Customer Success Manager for the City of Madison, Wisconsin. Abigail focuses on building a strong, transparent, and authentic relationship within their organization to improve team collaboration, project, and process adoption, fostering new partnerships, and bring brainstorms to life. She blends communications and experience with a passion for equity to ensure customer and organizational success. Just to kind of set the stage of what we're going to talk about today, government needs are changing, and it's hard to keep up with the ever-expanding citizen demand for increased customer service and expanded service offerings. As government IT leaders, we are facing an increased number of challenges, from the shortage of skilled IT talent to increasing innovation requests, and you also can't leave out cybersecurity as well when you have any conversation about government technology. We now have to perform a balancing act of considering resources and budgets and all the financial constraints, considering that carefully with the needs that are ever changing for our government services and our constituents. And as part of the recent digital transformation efforts that we've recently seen over the past couple of years, many agencies are now looking to modernize their legacy IT service desk solutions and also transform the complete IT service management strategy. A modernized IT service management solution brings IT tickets and projects together into one view. This can help agencies prevent resource strain and deliver better outcomes. Emerging technologies like AI and automation plays a role as well. By introducing automation, IT teams can optimize resources and budgets by eliminating the time spent on these mundane, non-value manual tasks and redundant data entry and cumbersome system administration that we all are used to. Today, we're going to discuss the importance of modernizing IT service management in the government sector. Together with our expert speakers, we're going to cover things like bringing IT service management together with project management on the same platform, using automation to free up hours in a day for your IT team, improving self-service adoption and knowledge-based content, and how to use analytics for resource capacity planning. So with that, Andrew, I'm going to turn it over to you. I'm looking forward to getting started with this conversation today.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Bill. Really appreciate it. I'm very glad to be here. Thank you for having me. You know, as we think about the public sector in IT, we're seeing such an incredible shift in the quantity of systems coming online and the demands being placed upon IT. And, you know, we work with government agencies of all different types and sizes. And what we're finding is that these IT teams have never had more demands. The acquisition of resources and keeping resources has never been more difficult. And so what we're finding is that most of these organizations want to do a better, more efficient job of serving their customers. They want to do a better job of managing data integrity, and they really want to try to reduce the burden that their IT staff has from an administrative standpoint, from a process standpoint, so they can be free to work on strategic or higher priority items. So what we're going to do during this call is we're going to talk with Abigail with some research as a background, the research we've been doing across our customer base and through studies with organizations that serve the government space. So as we think about 2023, we're seeing a big trend towards improved self-service, a focus on automation, getting better visibility into what our team members are working on and how that affects their capacity. So let's go ahead and dive in. And I'll start with the results of a survey that we conducted, where we interviewed over 100 top IT execs in the state and local government space. And you can read down this list, and we're going to focus on those top three. So what was most stark was how important improving self-service was and the knowledge management. So being able to deflect requests towards self-service from being served by an individual. The second was really better workflow and automation. So looking for ways to add efficiency, to reduce what we call mundane tasks and toil. And then also getting a better view of all the work we do, including our service management work, our project work, because it all consumes resources. So those were the top three, which I thought was really interesting. And the side note at the bottom is also worth noting too, is that as maturity increased, the importance of automation increased, because most of the organizations that were at a fairly mature level had already addressed or were in the process of addressing to a satisfactory level self-service, a holistic view. So really, really interesting. The other piece here was, what are some of the top challenges that are getting in the way of us not being able to make progress? So as we work with clients to solve some of these, and what the market told us is, number one, it's lack of resources. So our resources are spread very, very thin. Right? The volume of requests coming in and the volume of duties exceeds the supply, and it's really difficult to hire, can be competitive, and to retain. The second was just a lot of automated work, or a lot of manual work. So that mundane and that toil, or the error-prone, or the high volume types of requests that vacuum up our resource capacity, they aren't automated enough. And then the last one is just better integration and workflows, making sure data is where we need it to be, and that we have process in place so our processes can be efficient. So a bunch of interesting data coming from you and your peers. Now, what's also interesting here is that we focused a lot on self-service. And the issue we had here was a lot of people rated themselves very poorly when it came to self-service, which I thought was absolutely fascinating. And so let's stop there and dive in. And Abigail, let's start in with some questions. So when you look at that list of top challenges, right, and you think about your 2023, what are some of your key initiatives that you're implementing within the city of Madison around IT service management to improve?
Absolutely. Thank you, Andrew. And also thank you for having me today. To give a little context, we implemented the ITSM portion of Team Dynamics in March of last year. And since we've been using that within IT, so our number one goal for 2023 is to actually launch our IT customer portal. That will really open up the gateway to all city staff to be able to request services of IT and then also access that self-service portion of our service catalog, our knowledge base, and all of the content that we have to offer. It's really going to be a game changer for us because it will be consolidating all of these different places people go for resources currently. Mm-hmm. And with that being the main goal, the supporting goal, I would say, is to continue migrating our existing knowledge base articles into the TDX knowledge base. And that's really two audiences. The first being the internal IT knowledge base so that our technicians can respond to tickets faster. But then also the self-service knowledge base articles so that our customers can search for themselves. We can attach those knowledge base articles to tickets and teach people along the way and really empower our customers with resources and knowledge because we have that same capacity issue. We are understaffed at times and we're focusing on a lot of higher value implementations at the moment. And so anything we can do to empower our users to find self-service and find the resources they need is really a must for us.
Okay, very interesting. And Bill, what's your perspective? I mean, you're out there working with state and local government agencies all the time. As far as their objectives around service management, what are you seeing?
Great question. Thank you, Andrew. And, first I want to say, Abigail, hats off to what you're doing there in Madison. I work with a lot of state and local governments, and I always look for best practices and the things you're outlined, the things you've done in place. I've kind of done some research, some of these initiatives you've done, really best practice and leading the way. And thank you for what you're doing there. And what I see going forward in 2023, you have to step back and look at how we got here. I know sooner or later, we're going to be able to have a technology discussion around government and not include the pandemic and COVID, but it really was an enabler for digital transformation. It allowed blockers to be removed. Modernization and digital transformation of government due to the pandemic response allow for the rapid innovation. Services were impacted and included in government agencies at a rate never before seen in government. So the reason why that matters, what's going forward, is because government IT staff had to kind of pick up their game. Turning the same widgets that they've been turning every day for the past X amount of years wasn't part of the game plan. We had to step up the game and implement new and emerging technologies, and that type of scenario is no longer a part of the landscape during the pandemic response. But now we're in post-pandemic response. It's no longer a part of the current landscape either. Now, the day-to-day minutia still exist. Your tickets and requests and users and all that kind of good stuff. Somebody still has to do it. So that's where the concept of a modern IT service desk comes in to help fill those gaps. Some agencies are still looking to implement their very first service desk solution. Things are still being done manually, and the pandemic exposed that manual process. We need to automate that. While some agencies are a little more higher up the maturity level, they have a service desk solution, but now they're looking to expand the capabilities, adding some automation, or maybe doing some more ITIL-based stuff like full service catalogs and things like that to enable some more self-service solutions. What I found interesting, one of your research stats there was 27% had problems with integrations to other systems, Andrew. Now, you take that 27%, that could be plugged into any of the other challenges, because that what I've seen with most government agencies is these 27.3 integration with other systems. Now you can put that on top of better workflow optimization, improve service portal, things like that. None of that can happen without integration. And what I've seen with a lot of state and local government, that integration is a difficulty. These different silos were exposed during the pandemic. So what I see going forward is a effort to break down those silos and better integrations as we go on going forward. More projects will be related to wrangling these technologies that were implemented during the pandemic, as opposed to newer technologies being put on the table.
Mm-hmm. You know, it's interesting. As we look at these slides, Abigail, I'm always curious as to what IT leaders, especially in service management, are doing to address the increased demand on your resources. So how are you at City of Madison managing, as you know, the demands have ballooned and your head count may not have grown in commensurate fashion? Maybe it has, but that would be atypical from our experience. So how are you managing resource capacity given the explosion of demands over the past few years?
Absolutely. Well, what Bill mentioned in terms of the landscape is very true in our organization, and those demands are really skyrocketing, and our size has pretty much stayed the same. It's twofold. So I would say it's from both perspectives. It's proactive and reactive. The proactive, one of our biggest goals is to stand up portfolio project management this year within the tool, really get a sense for what projects align with our strategic goals, what projects align with our service catalog that exists today, and taking that more proactive approach with our customers and with the agencies. And then the reactive being tickets and utilizing our service management system. We really want to move to a place where our staff are utilizing tickets, one, because it's more straightforward, but now tracking their time. We historically have not tracked time to the certain degree of like on a task or on a project task. And we're really kind of asking staff to start doing that so we have a full picture of what expenditures do we have in terms of staff time, and then being able to take a holistic resource view of that to do our resource planning. So it's really getting us to that threshold of what's our baseline, and then how can we make adjustments and move that work around, or do we accept this project? Maybe it's not right now, maybe it's later. You know, in government, you don't always say no, it's more of like later, right? Mm-hmm. Because we want to support our people the most that we can. I just think it's those two pieces working together for us. We have to be able to know what we're working with and then where we're going.
And when you ask people to track time, right, that's usually a cultural hand grenade. So what is it that you're telling your team, hey, if you do this, this is what we're working towards to help you? What's the message there?
Yeah, so I will say the biggest incentive has actually been creating those self-service forms within our service management and the customer portal. That has been a really eye-opening experience for the project team. We sat down with all of our product owners and said, you know, let's look at the services that you provide and what information do you need up front from customers. And that has really given us an idea and a shared idea of what resources are required to complete a service. Mm-hmm. And then once we have that, it makes our staff feel more bought into the process. So then when they see those tickets come in, they have a sense for how much resources that they're using to complete it. And really just asking them to utilize those fields within TDX. It makes it very simple. So we're doing that well with ticketing right now, and then we're hoping that we can carry that over to projects when that's fully implemented.
Okay, great. So wanted to jump back to this slide because we're talking a lot about self-service, and during the research we've done, it was amazing how low most organizations rated themselves from a self-service perspective. You know, as we think about building a self-service portal, that could be a service catalog, that could be a service request catalog, that could be a knowledge base, a hybrid of those two. You know, as you approach this self-service, right, you talked about that being a big initiative. How are you introducing this to your organization? You know, how are you looking to make this part of the business culture at City of Madison?
Yeah, so IT self-service is a new concept in our organization. So with that in mind, it's going to be a transition. There's going to be a long transition period. And some of the routes we'll be taking is we have an employee intranet right now where a lot of these resources are kind of scattered. And our IT customer portal will combine knowledge base, the service catalog, service request forms, incident reporting, all of that into one place. So it's going to be really crucial for us to do some cross-linking and also really train our help desk on how to refer people. We recognize that help desk calls are just going to go up. When we flip the switch live to the customer portal, we're going to get more phone calls. But our plan is to equip our help desk staff, those frontline staff answering the phones, on how to train customers where to go and that they will be able to find what they need when they get there. We're also going to be using a robust communication and training plan. A lot of that will be capitalizing on the things we have in place already. So for example, we have an email monitor in place where if people email help desk, it creates a Team Dynamics ticket right now. We'll be leveraging that and turning off that email monitor at some point and replacing it with an auto reply that says, help desk is moved. We're online now. Go here, linking in that way. And just really getting out and working with our stakeholder groups and continuing that communication. We've been ramping up this communication plan for about 6 months now, but we want to make sure that we get people trained up in a place that they feel comfortable, but also support those who maybe they're a frontline worker and they don't do much work online right now, having a different training plan for them. And still having phone calls available, I think that that's still a value to a lot of folks, especially if they don't have access to a device or something happens in the field.
And Bill, what are you seeing on the topic of self-service? How is this playing prominently or improminently across the government space?
Yeah, that's actually a great question, because in response to the pandemic, like I mentioned earlier, it kind of hit the fast forward button on these new technology adoption. And part of it was self-service, whether that was the citizen out there doing their own service requests or even internal as well. Gone are the days where the public expects or they're willing to stand in long lines at the courthouse to fill out this paperwork to go from there. So, and that mindset is kind of transferred over to the internal employees as well. We now, as a public in a government agency, we expect a certain level of service that comes with any new technology that's adopted. Even a simple website. Now the citizens and internal employees, they want their internal government offices to have the same level of customer service as they would receive from the leading private companies. They want their government service with second-day prime shipping, so to speak, and all the normal customer service and email comes back and text messaging and multi-platform and all that kind of customer service stuff that they would get anyway. And from an IT perspective, it really plays into that field as well. For a long time, central IT has been fighting shadow IT forever. But now with self-service adoption, our average business users at different agencies and the functional business units, they're much more tech savvy now. So we're in the spot where we embrace this, I don't even want to call it shadow IT, it's innovation IT. We just give them the guide rails and the solutions to do it. And I really want to hone in on this whole idea of customer focused. And you kind of mentioned with your survey, most government agencies related themselves low, and that's not surprising because that's something historically we haven't done. We haven't, it's just, hey, well, this service is slow. Well, you know what? Let's get more people. We got X amount of tickets. Let's throw more people at it. But the idea of innovating from the inside out hasn't really happened. This is the first time we're starting to see in government a focus on user experience and an improved, user environment, doing things like customer journey maps and internal user journey maps throughout the whole process. But back to your original question, I'm sorry, a little bit of a tangent there. Self-service adoption, the benefits of that, it's obviously a reduction in manual tasks, but I think the benefit is more on the expected user experience. The trust in the system will go up because we, a government agency, implementing this service that has this self-service, that's what the users are used to in their leading private companies. So they expect there's a certain level of trust in the tech giants out there. So we can get that same level of trust with us because we have those same type of technologies using self-service automation. And in most users, whether they're in the public with the citizens or internal agency users, non-IT, prefer to do things on their own because they're more tech savvy. They won't deal with no time constraints, waiting on IT to turn around that service ticket, 24, 48 hours or a week. They want to kind of do it themselves. They want to multitask it while they're working on other projects, and working also, they can do it in phases, and this overall trust as we lean into this user experience that we haven't seen before in government.
Mm-hmm. And Abigail, a quick related question. I think a lot of people are probably watching saying, wow, we'd really like to get to a place where we can implement self-service and a knowledge base, but that takes time. So how did you justify the resources or spending your team's time on implementing this, right? Because obviously it will take time and it's not going to be an immediate return because you're going to be taking time away from something else. How did you approach that with the organization to get buy-in?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, for starters, any great implementation and budget acquisition in local government starts with a great sponsor. And we had a wonderful sponsor in our IT director who really went to bat for us. The pandemic helped because our existing legacy service management system wasn't keeping up. And actually, funny thing is what Bill mentioned is one of the biggest complaints that we were getting from customers was that our legacy system was just sending like very bare bones information about a person's ticket. And it was a black hole. It was like at the start of the ticket and then when the ticket was complete was the only notifications that you got. And we had a lot of complaints about that. And our customers wanted transparency. They wanted buy-in. They wanted to have a stake in their request, and they wanted to be able to provide feedback to us. So that was helpful because our culture of the organization was kind of moving ahead with us. But when it comes to the IT customer portal specifically, that has been an ongoing selling point. And that's one where as we've started to implement the service management system, we'll have our help desk say, this would be a lot better if customers filled it out themselves. And like, you're right, let's continue to build out that customer portal. Like I said, for the knowledge base, we already have a lot of knowledge articles. They're just not consolidated to a centralized location, which makes them less than helpful, unless you're someone who emailed it around after a specific training. That one has been a heavier lift because we all do have a lot of stuff going on. So we've had a couple interns and hourlies come on and assist us with that specifically, which has been really great because there is a lot of untapped technology talent in our high schools, in our colleges, and entry-level jobs are hard to come by now. So this has been a great way for us to build up folks, give them an opportunity and exposure to government IT, and then invest in them, and hopefully they would want to stay with us or go to another government agency and kind of give back. So those are kind of the two techniques that we've used. But I would say that it's just been this journey of enabling folks to feel like they have the right to the knowledge that we all have, that nothing is secret anymore. Our customers want to be able to participate. We've done a number of pilots on our customer portal. And I would say that the big benefit is that it makes our solution better and better. Every time we get feedback from a customer, our user experience gets better, and we're doing our jobs better because we're serving our customers more, and they're giving us time back to implement other things. So it's been valuable.
That's a great story. And, the concept of a self-sustaining cycle of improvement is very powerful, where you implement a knowledge-centric culture. And I'm a huge fan of KCS, knowledge-centered service. It starts to snowball, and it starts to save you more time. And the more you invest, the more time the more time saved. So it's a great return on investment and a really great career progression option because it's not very expensive to train your team in KCS. Right? It's something that an organization can do to give somebody some upward mobility without a tremendous cost. Now, as we go through and we work with customers of all shades, a couple things have stood out when thinking about a really great self-service portal. And we wanted to distill those down just to give the audience some things to think about. So the first thing is it has to be easy to use. So what does that mean, right? That means that it's easy to navigate, it's logical, it's not in IT speak, So the language used is that your customers would use, whether that's citizens or internal team members, right? So they don't have to make a leap in vernacular. So it's really simple. The other thing that I think is really important is that the content is searchable via Google. So no matter what you're looking for, the first place people go is Google. So I might type in City of Madison IT PC problem. I should be able to find a knowledge base article that tells me how I deal with PC problems there, or whatever it might be. The second is accessibility. And I think this gets overlooked at times, but in the public sector, it's really critically important that these systems are easy for those with disabilities to use. And it's not just the right thing to do, it's also a risk mitigator. So I'm sure everyone has had nightmares or been impacted by lawsuits for their technology not being accessible. That's something that's preventable, something we have to focus on as a vendor quite a bit. And then to your point, Abigail, a channel for feedback. So if a knowledge article is not good, we should know about it. If it doesn't answer the question, we should know about it. And then also responsiveness. So I think what we're seeing is that most of our customers don't want to load another mobile app. They just want the thing to work. So whether I'm on my PC, my tablet, or my phone, that portal should work well. I think those are some really important components. The other thing that's really interesting is how quickly that these service management practices and processes are expanding outside of IT. So you think about that as enterprise service management. So enterprise service management is the overarching umbrella that includes IT service management, but also includes service management, lots of different areas, different departments, divisions, et cetera. So many parts of our organizations are actually delivering service. And so when we think about the tools, that's one thing. So how do we support the tickets and the workflows, but also that client portal presence, right? We have to be able to support multiple portals with their own branding, right? For different, again, departments, divisions, et cetera. So these tools are really, really important as we look forward. Now, in addition to that, when we think about the flexibility, think about all the different areas of your organization that want to manage service or manage service today. And as an IT group, you might be supporting call it a small number to hundreds of web forms where people submit requests. And if those departments need something changed, guess what? You have to deal with it. You support the solutions. Modern enterprise service management platforms move away from that, allowing these departments to serve themselves. As someone who is simply has a business mind and is in the department can actually maintain and manage that solution. So whether that's the client portal or that's the ticketing solution, it's really, really important. I mean, you can think about all the different groups who want their own presence. They have that web portal today with their request forms that you built. They might not want to let that go. I mean, the panacea of having one enterprise portal is great, but getting people there sometimes takes a couple interim steps and saying, hey, you can have your own portal to start. And then, by the way, we could also put some of these services and knowledge base articles in the enterprise portal too. It really, really helps us move. It really helps us move the needle on service management. And the other thing too is all these departments manage projects. So it's not only IT that can benefit from having project work and service work in one place, it's also some of these departments. And it's crazy how we've seen this proliferate. Now, shifting gears a little bit, Abigail, I want to talk about automation. So we're seeing a real move to what I like to call is wring the toil and mundane work out of IT through automation. And when we sit down and work with customers and look at their landscape of where their time's going, inevitably there are a handful of things that are ripe for automation: password resets, group permission changes, application permission changes, name changes, onboarding, offboarding. These take a tremendous amount of time, super high volume. And what it does is it takes good people away from interacting with other people who need their help that can't be automated. So typically there's a great way we've heard a client talk about it as supercharging IT with automation and integration. And we've seen that. So when you think about that, what kind of workflows and automation are you turning to at City of Madison to help kind of wring that mundane toil out of your organization. And by the way, no one likes to do that work. Very few people sit down and say, I want to spend 80% of my time changing permissions. I don't know a single, maybe I'm sure they're out there. I'm sure there's someone out there who just loves to change names, change permissions, set up Microsoft Teams. I don't know any of them. So it makes them happier. So where are you starting and what does the future look like for you at Madison?
Yeah, for sure. Well, we have a lot of that, and it'd be fine if that was the only thing they had to do, right? But we're asking them to do like 6 jobs at once. So for us, a lot of the automations that we've been working on, a lot of the workflows we've been working on have been around those HR activities that you named. So new hire setups for us is really just trying our best to get to a point where day one of that employee's first day, they're ready to go. They have their workstation acquired and set up. They have permission to everything that they're going to need. We have them a list of what training they're going to need to go to based on the access that they have. All of that new hire setup, along with transfers. We have a lot of transfers at the city between agencies. And currently, our HR department doesn't have an HRM. So every agency has their own siloed process. And IT is often the one that has to transcend those silos and try to figure that out. And then also terminations, offboarding, making sure that we're being, secure and good stewards of our data and getting those accounts terminated when as close as we can. But then there's some more organizational policy-based processes that we have that might be around an ordinance or an APM. And one of those is our new software request process. People are requesting new software outside of our normal tool set weekly. As you mentioned, that you can't really control shadow IT anymore. You have to be able to enable people to do their work, and they do have needs. So we have a process for that. And ever since we've been able to start automating that, it's really improved customer satisfaction because yes, it's a lengthy process, but if we can speed it up and make it automated and get those, sign-offs faster, it makes people a lot happier. And then the one that has been, in my opinion, the biggest ROI so far is incident management. We have tons of incidents that come in. Incidents could be, maybe just a release didn't go as planned, or it could be something larger. But either way, we now have a workflow that sets up with a major incident ticket, and all the resources are acquired right there. We all get notified. I can make my communications plan right there within the task template. It just really increases our response time to those incidents, and it cuts down on the documentation because we can do it as we go.
Yeah, it's remarkable when somebody changes the lens a little bit on how we do business, right? And looks at, wait a minute, let's look at everything that's vacuuming up time and what can be automated. And initially, the knee-jerk reaction, and many times, well, we've always done it that way. There's no hope of making it better, right? You get that, and I've seen that plenty of times. But when we look at it, we can say, okay, how would we do this? If we had a magic wand, which Mentor of Mine says are in short supply, what would we do? And think about then how would we accomplish it? And what we've seen, and Bill mentioned integration automation platforms, there are new tools that weren't available a couple of years ago where we can automate, build integrations, manipulate data without being programmers, right? Where someone with a business mind, if I'm a business analyst or a sysadmin, I don't know how to write code or scripts, but if I have that skill set, I can now actually implement these automations and integrations. And by the way, change them if we find a better way. Our integration automation platform, it's crazy. I mean, if you think about, as a product comes online, the first full year that was in market, it was over 20% of our sales. That is crazy. What that told us was, wow, there is a lot of opportunity out there to make things better for our customers and for our people and for us as leaders, freeing up resources. And a lot of that gets grouped into, digital transformation is this broad term of let's make things form-based and workflow-based and make sure the data moves without us without us having to manually do anything. It's a pretty broad term, but I think that's what we're seeing. And it's really exciting. I've said this before, and maybe some of you have seen this on a webinar before, but I really believe with everything's going on in the ways that we now have to engage with our customers through automation, self-service, conversational AI, right? Which all allow people to focus more on the work that requires people and where people want to be working with each other to help one another, and they don't feel pressured that they have to rush or not do a quality job. I think this is the golden age of service management. I think we are entering a tremendous time in service management because these tools that people have been envisioning for so long are starting to materialize. So I think it's just an incredibly exciting time, and I could talk about it forever. Now, Bill, from a digital transformation standpoint, what are you seeing out there in 2023 and beyond? What are people talking about as far as automation, digitizing? What are the big initiatives going on, and with a lens on serving the customer?
Well, absolutely. All your comments, I'll double down on automation. It's a game changer. Just from the university side, we teach a class on robotic process automation, and it's a very hot topic, and there's internships and jobs related to that. So it's a growing thing. And there's Deloitte did a case study last year, I think, and this was based on the federal government, and it found that 25% of day-to-day work tasks could be eliminated with automation. And I would probably surmise that similar results could be found with state and local as well. But what do I see going forward in the future? During the pandemic, IT saved government. It's my opinion that we really stepped up to the plate. We saved government, and we earned a seat at the big table. We started making, now we're sitting at the table to make strategic decisions for the agency and government, not just the IT person in the back corner of the data center turning IT widgets. So what we have to do now going forward is to maintain that level of expectancy. We have to focus on the future, and I think it's more not about the technology. So it's going to be the focus for technologists is about how to solve business-related problems that just happen to use the technology in the background. Not coming in, hey, there's this new technology I want to implement. It does these XYZ gigabytes, and it's never going to fly over. But making that business process enabling, oh, by the way, we're going to use the technology in the back end to make it happen. There's definitely going to be a focus on cybersecurity. The conversation we had earlier about automation, I think automation and cybersecurity go hand in hand, because you take any of the big breaches, especially from a cloud standpoint, it was related to a misconfiguration on a human error side. So the more we can automate that, the more it lessens the human factor in that. And there's so much information coming in from a cybersecurity perspective that using AI and automation is not just a nice to have. It's a necessity as we're going forward. I think cloud is still going to be a topic of conversation in the future. Pre-pandemic, the state and local government was still on the lower end of adoption. During the pandemic, it was higher, but now we're starting to be a consideration of how do we do this? Do we bring it back in? Do we still use cloud? A lot of agencies still kept on-prem stuff. They did like a bolt-on just to make things available in the cloud. So I think these conversations of hybrid cloud are still going to continue in the future. But in my opinion, it's not going to be called cloud computing, 5-10 years in the future. It's just going to be called computing. It's just the way we do things. It's just it's not a cloud or not. It's just the way we do it. But it's going to be for state and local government. There's going to be a multi-cloud architecture. There's going to be a hybrid cloud architecture as we go forward from there. And I think you kind of touched on this a little bit, Andrew, is a focus on low-code solutions. I'm predicting a decline in custom-built applications of these team developers making this, 18-month project to make this thing for the department of whatever, versus a good, solid solution to develop some type of low-code platform, then put that in the hands of the agency users, put that in the hands of the business users to make the line-level business decisions. Then IT is supporting that platform, but no longer are we write the system specs and spend 2 years developing it and doing it. And the same thing for these big, huge COTS applications as well, having a good IT service management solution, having a good low-code solution put in place, and automate some of that and do some low-code solutions. And, And I want to make a comment about the automation. Sometimes there's fear for implementation, especially for legacy IT employees. Oh, this is, the initial thought is, oh, this is my job. I'm the Homer Simpson. I hit the button every day. Who's going to hit the button? If it's going to be automated, that's what I do. I'll come in every day. But sometimes you have to get to the root of that fear that automation is not taking your job. You can just, as Abigail mentioned, you want to do some of these more innovative jobs, but you can't because you spend all day hitting the button. So you kind of get to the root of what is the trepidation, what is the fear. So a quick story, one of the projects that I did with automation, it was dealing with the law enforcement agency doing accident reports. And it was a legacy system where someone had to manually print it out, take it to an admin that's been working there for 10, 15 years, and she would take them and scan them, put them in an envelope, and the officer would come pick them up. Well, let's automate that. The officer can, in a car, can scan it, go directly to a cloud system, and all that goes away. It makes sense for everybody, but there was a lot of pushback, a lot of resistance, and you would think the obvious is that's my job, but that wasn't it. When I got down to the investigation, the resistance was because these good-looking officers wouldn't come visit me anymore. So sometimes it's not about what we think. So it's the relationship. What we're going to go forward. What does IT look like in the future? We talked about it a second ago. User experience, and from the IT executive, like we're talking about, this IT service management solutions and knowledge base is about building these relationships and taking the technology out of technology implementation.
It's interesting. We've seen quite a bit of fear, and everyone in these big discussion forums, anytime the audience is large, it's like, well, is automation coming for our jobs? And the answer is typically no. Automation is coming to remove the part of your job that makes you think about getting another job, right? I mean, at the end of the day, the stuff that's error prone and that you don't like to deal with, let's get that off your plate. And that's the majority of automation opportunities, are these mundane things that nobody really loves to do, like I said. So Abigail, I'm sure there's plenty of questions from the audience, but a quick question for you. So it's 2023, right? You think about transforming your organization. You've laid out your plan for implementing some workflow and automation and focusing this year on self-service. What's beyond, right? So you have the magic wand, and 2025, right? What is City of Madison doing from a customer service and service management perspective?
Well, end-all vision would be that we have our customer portal live and it's thriving, and that people know where to go to find their resources and how to request services of us. But there's, like I mentioned in the beginning, all of those supportive processes and measures that also need to be high functioning, like our portfolio and project management, processes and strategies, and the system itself. Building those relationships. People are any organization's best asset, right? And I think my goal and our organization's goal is to figure out how to equip those people. I work on a team and in a department of the most creative thinkers I've ever met in my life, and figuring out how to, tap them more and figure out how they can give us feedback and progress iteratively with feedback, right? Use our ITIL terms to be able to bring some of this stuff to life. But I would just love for us to be in a place where there is not anxiety around, should I ask IT for help? I don't want to bother them. They're already overworked. And then on the IT part of, okay, I have all these projects you want me to do, plus all of these tasks. I would love to see that reined in a self-service world where it's low barrier to entry, and then also that we're working very closely with our agencies to establish their technology portfolio and making sure we're moving together in a cohesive way toward our goals as an organization, and strategizing that rather than always chasing down these different lanes, really coming together and working as a whole. So that's the dream.
Awesome. I think the future is bright. So Bill, I'll hand it back over to you.
Well, thank you so much for taking us through that journey, and also for including me in the conversation. I think we could have this conversation for hours. This is a really important topic.
Agreed.
Before we get into our audience questions, we got quite a few questions from our audience. We're going to try to get to them all. And I just want to remind our audience to submit your questions through the Q&A box at the bottom. And please submit your question. Even if you haven't done one already, we'll start into what we have. And please send in your questions. We'll get to as many as we can. But also, before we get started, we've already got several comments and questions from many of you about getting copies of today's presentation. Well, I'm going to tell you, you're in luck, because within the next 48 hours, Government Technology will provide all attendees with a link to the full recording for this session. And you can use this for your reference, or you can even share it with anyone in your department or your colleagues. So be on the lookout for that recording. All right, let's get started with our first question. Now, this is we actually got several questions around this topic. So this is pretty straightforward. We talked about this fear of automation, but also there's fear for implementing new technologies. How do we do this? This seems like a big lift for a lot of our people in the audience. So just to summarize the multiple questions that I've received is, how easy is it to implement Team Dynamics? Is there some type of professional services, or if I sign up, am I looking for this is going to be a 2-year project to implement while I'm doing things else? So if you don't mind, I will first start with the real case study with Abigail, because you've actually done this. How easy it was for you to implement, and then Andrew, you can kind of tell from the Team Dynamics side as well.
Sure.
Yeah, so for us, so we did have some professional services, which was absolutely necessary for us. I would say that implementing TDX as a technology was simple. The part that needs change management and needs human change management is your processes. Technology will always highlight gaps in your process. And for us, that's what we've spent most of the time navigating, is sitting down with our IT staff and learning their jobs and learning how they do things, and then working with them to make it better and then optimize and automate it within the tool. And that's really been the journey. And so I would say it's two parts, but even in that process of working with staff for the stuff that's not documented, if you go into it with an open mind, you go into it expecting a little bit of resistance and expecting that there's going to be change management necessary, I think that it can be simple. Like I said, you just have to take your time and really work with folks and hear them out. It's really important to hear what your staff have to say about the technology and how you're implementing it.
So Andrew, I'd like to get you to weigh in on this.
How easy is it? I agree with everything that Abigail said, right? I mean, implementing the technology is pretty straightforward. It's just how do you want to implement it? What are the processes, and how do we roll it out to make sure it's adopted? Those are the big conversations. The other thing that I think is important is the types of professional services resources that you have at your disposal, right? You've got platforms where it's pretty much self-service. You watch videos and try to configure the tool, or maybe you can call somebody about how to set up a field, but you're not getting process improvement. On the other side of the spectrum, you have solutions that require Accenture or Deloitte to implement, right? And it's going to be a massive, massive undertaking. I feel like for most state and local government, there's the answer is in between those two, where, and that's where we've tried to tune our services from these lessons learned is, hey, let's provide process intelligence, be able to give guidance on change and guidance on, incident problem change processes, and then also on that product. So it's kind of that Goldilocks, just right level of service. We've seen that to be a really successful model in the public space.
So if you don't mind, I'd like to add to that as well. You both touched on process improvement and part of implementation. Yeah, it's easy to implement technology. Kind of I mentioned earlier, take the technology out of it. But unfortunately, I've been on the bad side of failed technology projects in government. I have been the result of millions of taxpayer dollars wasted on IT projects. And a lot of times I can boil it down to trying to mold a new technology implementation to existing business processes versus going in with an open mindset. Look at our existing processes and let's mold them to this new technology that we have in place. So, you implement the new technology, but have an open mindset of how can we change our existing processes to match the new technology? And that success rate has greatly improved. So, Andrew, this is a more of a technical question. We've got a couple questions from our audience, because I mentioned earlier in the opening that we're going to talk about project tasks and tickets and one solution, and we didn't really get into that a lot. So can we roll back a little bit? How does this solution integrate project tasks and tickets into this one view?
Yeah, if we take a resource perspective, so a team member, somebody working in IT, with the exception of, I'm going to paint some broad strokes, with the exception of a service agent, right, or a pure project manager, we do different types of work. We have a hand in providing service or operational work that would traditionally be tickets. We have project-based work as well. And from a resource perspective, I look at my work as one thing. These are things I need to do. It's not separated by systems, right? I'm not saying, oh, this is project portfolio management software stuff, and oh, this is service management and operational software stuff. It's just my work, but I'm going to lots of different tools. So our platform and the thesis is, well, when we consolidate those, we have a single pane of glass for the resource. That makes it easier because now I can see everything that is on my plate in one place. But it also has a compounding benefit with leadership, because now as a leader, I can also see everything that's on people's plate and try to justify new resources or push back on unreasonable expectations. So that's been a very, very powerful, piece of our solution offering, is that sort of combined environment.
Abigail, are you using those features of that combined environment?
Yes, we are. And it's been a game changer, I would say, for our staff. I will say that we are still in this process of standardizing. Our IT shop is a big fan of standards. We want to make sure we're all so aware of how important it is that we're on the same level playing field. And so we're constantly trying to establish standards and revisit those standards. But for the most part, the ability to track in my work. And then we actually, within the ticketing application, we deployed kind of dashboard templates for all of our middle level supervisors, our team leaders, so that they would have consistency and they can, adjust it to their needs, but so that they have a whole picture of as a resource manager as well. So it's both sides. And we do know that there's some other things coming down the line from Team Dynamics that we, with workspaces and that kind of stuff that we'd be really excited to leverage. But for right now, the My Work has been really helpful for staff. And then we don't mandate it. We allow people to, if that's something that's beneficial to you, use it. But I'm not going to tell you that's the only way to track your work, because we do have varying preferences, but it's available to everyone.
Well, let me stay with you on this. Another question here. I'm sure you evaluated several different ITSM platforms going forward. And so we got some questions from our audience. They'd love to hear from people who's actually implemented it. How does this solution that you implemented with Team Dynamics compare with other ITSM platforms? And yes, Andrew, I'm gonna give you a chance to weigh on that as well, but we'll jump in there with the customer first. So what have you found was some of the key differentiators?
Yeah, well, for one, and I was not privy to all of those demos, so I don't have a great comparison, but for myself, for one, Team Dynamics has been a great partner for public sector. We have so many policies and different nuances. When you were talking about 508 compliance, accessibility is a main pillar for us. And just having a vendor that understands that and us not always having to explain those things, it really has allowed us to mold some of those processes to fit our organization, but then also change some processes to fit it's two-way street, like you were saying before, Bill. And the other thing as well is specific to the customer portal and the service management with ticketing is the ability for multiple portals. We do have a small IT shop in our police and fire departments, and they function kind of on their own and in some aspects, and a lot of it's confidential. So having the ability for them to have their own customer portal consolidated to themselves, while also leveraging our enterprise portal, has been really important because we have two different service catalogs, and that wasn't a feature in some other options.
Okay, Andrew, thank you for bringing this conversation to us, and thank you to Team Dynamics. So I'd like to lead you with the final word of what makes Team Dynamics different.
I think that a lot of the reasons Abigail mentioned, but I think we really focus on the customer being successful. At the end of the day, we're successful if the customer loves our software and it adds a lot of value. So our services are completely, home white glove services are completely oriented in making sure customers really like what we do. Second is, I think we're the best mix of capability and ease of ownership in the market. So you have some low-end solutions that you're going to run out of runway and need to switch because you can't mature. And then there are some enormous systems that require 5+ full-time people to manage. We provide the best mix of capability for ease of ownership in the market. I think that really has resonated with the public sector really, really well. It's been a huge area of growth for us.
Thank you very much. I want to be respectful of our 1 hour time commitment. So unfortunately, we'll have to wrap it up here. Like I said earlier, we could have kept talking about this all day long. This is a fascinating conversation. But definitely, I want to thank everyone for joining us, and a big thank you to my fellow speakers, Andrew and Abigail, and to our partners at Team Dynamics for enabling us to have this discussion. And thank you to our audience for spending your valuable time with us. And if we didn't get the chance to answer your question you submitted, someone will reach out to you individually and address those as soon as possible. Thank you again, and we look forward to seeing you soon at another government technology event. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.